Greetings to all and welcome to the Seattle Law of One podcast. Today's episode is about Indigo Children. Indigo Children is a term that refers to children who seem to have unusual, perhaps otherworldly gifts, such as psychic abilities. The entity known as Quo has spoken more than a few times about Indigo Children, noting that they are born with what they call dual activated bodies, meaning they are wired for both third and fourth density vibrations, probably more fourth than third. Quo has also noted that many Indigo Children already graduated to fourth density, but chose to come back to Earth in order to help the planet and help humanity in its transition to fourth density. What does all this mean and how can we help? Let's find out. My name is Jonathan Tong. I'm a facilitator for the Seattle Law of One study group. We can be found on the list of study groups at the L&L Research website shown on your screen. We do also have a Facebook group, and we do meet on Zoom twice a week, Tuesdays from 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Time, Saturdays 8 to 10 a.m. Pacific Time. You don't have to live in Seattle or anywhere near Seattle to join our Facebook group or our Zoom sessions. Anyone who's interested and available is welcome to join. Just contact us at seattlelawofone@gmail.com if you would like to get on our mailing list. We send out emails once a week with the Zoom links and information on what we're talking about that week. We do also have a YouTube channel where we keep recordings of previous podcast episodes, as well as recordings of Q&A sessions with Jim McCarty, Austin Bridges, Gary Bean, and Tricia Bean from the L&L Research channeling team. You can go to our YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button if you would like to get notifications when we upload new videos, and contact us at seattlelawofone@gmail.com if you would like to join any of our Q&A sessions. Otherwise, as mentioned, today's topic is Indigo Children. Let's go ahead and meet our panelists. Panelists, let our viewers know who you are and where you're calling from, starting with Raquel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Raquel. I'm calling from Wesley Chapel, Florida. Happy to be back. I have two kids. One, I'm pretty certain is a dual activated child that came back. And the other one, I'm still on the fence, but she does have a very intense desire to learn about spiritual stuff. So maybe she is also an indigo child.
I'm guessing anyone under the age of 20 at this point is dual activated to some extent. Aram?
Hi, I'm Aram, and I'm calling from the San Francisco Bay Area. And I have one child, and he is 10. And I'm not sure if I would label him as an indigo child. I just know that, yeah, he is unique and special. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Well, maybe we'll find out today. Thank you for being here. And Ragnar?
I'm Ragnar. I'm calling from Olympia, Washington. I've got two daughters aged 8 and 5, whom I strongly suspect are dual activated.
Nice. Well, so glad to have all three of you here and appreciate it and looking forward to a great conversation. Usual reminder to our viewers that none of us here are experts or authorities on the Law of One or Indigo Children. We're just normal people like you or parents trying to figure shit out, trying to figure out how to raise kids in this world. Anything that we say could be wrong. You're welcome to disagree with anything that any of us say. Otherwise, if you are already familiar with the Law of One, you might want to, and the entities known as Ra and Quo, you might want to skip ahead to the chapter on dual activation. Otherwise, for those who are new to the Law of One, you can think of the Law of One as a set of spiritual teachings based on the understanding that all is one, and that one thing is love. All of the reading passages that we're looking at today come to us through the process known as channeling. You can think of channeling as a form of telepathic communication between humans and other entities, such as angelic beings, extraterrestrial beings, inner planes beings, spirits of deceased, higher self, etc. A channel basically serves as a mouthpiece for other entities to speak through. And in this case, those entities would appear to be of extraterrestrial origin. There are two types of channeling that have been developed by our friends at L&L Research. Trance channeling is when the channel is in a trance state, unconscious, as if asleep, meaning they are not at all aware of what words are coming out of their mouth as they are speaking. This is how contact was made with the entity known as Ra back in the early 1980s. Conscious channeling is when the channel is in a conscious but deep meditative state, meaning they are only somewhat aware of what words are coming out of their mouth as they are speaking. This is how contact was made with the entity known as Quo, starting in the mid-1980s up to present day. So who is Quo? You could think of Quo as a group entity made up of 3 social memory complexes, Ra at 6th density, Latwii at 5th density, and Hatan at 4th density. You can think of a social memory complex as a planetary consciousness. It would be as if the entire human population of Earth was merged into one group mind, one group consciousness. You can think of densities or dimensions as different levels of consciousness, different levels of reality, since those 2 things are so closely intertwined. Imagine, if you will, that the elements of earth, fire, water, and air have some form of consciousness, as many indigenous peoples have said for centuries that they do. We would call that first density. You can think of second density as the level of consciousness of plants and animals, clearly a quantum leap above and beyond the consciousness of what we regard as inanimate matter. You can think of third density as the level of consciousness of humans and cetaceans like whales and dolphins. Again, a significant quantum leap above and beyond the consciousness of plants and other animals. You can think of fourth density as the level of consciousness of social memory complexes, as if the entire human population was merged into one single group consciousness. Again, clearly a quantum leap above and beyond the level of consciousness of one individual person. You can think of fifth density as whatever would be a comparable quantum leap above and beyond fourth density. You can think of sixth density as whatever would be a comparable quantum leap above and beyond fifth density. There's obviously much more to it than that, but for now, suffice it to say, the entity known as Quo appears to be a group entity made up of 3 planetary consciousnesses, Ra at 6th density, Latwii at 5th density, Hatan at 4th density. First contact with Quo was made by the L&L research channeling team back in 1986, almost 2 years after the end of the Ra contact in 1984. They have been channeled every month since then up to the present day by the L&L research channeling team. You can find transcripts of those sessions at the L&L Conscious Channeling Library shown on your screen. So having said that, let us take a look at a passage on dual activation. On May 2nd, 2004, Quo said, "From our standpoint, there is virtually no difference in those called Indigo Children and those called Crystal Kids or Crystal Children. The designations indicate a double activated third density, fourth density body, which makes such children as they grow up more able to access fourth density reality. Since fourth density is here, since entities are living in a combined third density, fourth density atmosphere, there's an increasing ability for all people to work upon what this instrument would call DNA, to work upon the self at the cellular level, lifting consciousness and asking it to take hold of the new reality that is interpenetrating third density. These children are far more able to do this than those with only the yellow ray body activated because their DNA is already altered to some extent. However, their purpose here is as pioneers. They come in terms of fourth density within very basic and primitive conditions and are giving their lives to help establish fourth density and to be bridges of light for those who would listen to that which they have to say and to live in such a way as to follow such advice as they would give. To put it another way, they are here to radiate light and love, as are all entities. It is hoped by their higher selves that they will have more efficacy in doing so than those who have not the advantage of a double activated body." Super beautiful passage, and I love that part in the second paragraph in blue about they come in terms of fourth density within very basic and primitive conditions and are given their lives to help establish fourth density to be bridges of light. I remember when I was a child, I remember thinking, wow, this planet is one fucked up place. I'm pretty sure I didn't use those words, but to me, this world seemed really primitive, really barbaric, really cruel. I could not believe that people could do the things to each other that they were doing. And that was back in the 70s and 80s, and the world seems even more crazy and barbaric now. So, I think it's a beautiful thing that there would be souls who would be willing to come in to help the planet through this difficult transition time. Did you have any thoughts on this passage, Raquel?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to challenge your thought process on it being more barbaric now. Remember, there was times when people used to get their hands cut off for just taking an apple off a stand or something. So I don't know. I feel like we're making some type of progress, possibly. They do
It's
their
a good point. Depends where you look, I suppose.
yeah, do their torture in secret now, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, that just came to my mind when you said that because I was like, we're evolving, but very slowly. So for those of us, keep hope alive. That's what I have to say about that. But
Yeah.
when it comes to this part, particularly for me, my son, it was very his whole incarnation, his whole life has always been like a mystery to me, and I've been very on the side observing him and seeing him as somebody that's not from here. Like from the moment he got here, actually from the moment I got pregnant. Brief quick story, when I got pregnant, I felt like I was hit with such energy that I couldn't contain in myself. It was more energy than, or a different energy that I was not used to. I didn't know how to handle it. It was totally different from my first pregnancy. And I know this because I went to the doctor like 3 times asking him to put me on something. That's how I was like, I couldn't handle what I was going through. For the first 3 months, it was very energetically off. I was completely off. And then settled in, and pregnancy went through normal. But yeah, he came out early. Um, and I didn't know at the time that when he was born that he was gonna have autism. I thought he was developing normally. He was challenging his sister. So I didn't see it at the beginning, but I felt it. I just didn't know that's what was happening. So if you're a mom and you're like, you're not sure what's going on, and you felt something different, and you it was out of worldly for you, especially with your body, take note and be aware that this might be something that's progressing for you. But he was completely different from the beginning. And since then, I feel like he doesn't want to be a part of this world. And that's probably because he isn't, he's probably
Yeah.
so immersed in the four density vibration that he's like, this doesn't even make sense. And the way he expresses that is that he communicates with us in the mind, because he doesn't speak. He's completely nonverbal, and he does require a lot of support, but he offers something way more than anything that we can imagine. It's just this soulful love that everybody around him recognizes.
Your beingness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate your sharing that from the top, so our viewers who also have autistic children or know of autistic children can relate to it. And yeah, there's a beautiful passage we'll be looking at before too long where Quo spoke specifically about children with autism or with ADHD. So stay tuned if that is of interest to you. Aram, any thoughts, reflections to add?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm with you, Raquel. Like when I had my child, he's considered high functioning, so he's verbal, and he was verbal actually very early on. And so I didn't think I thought he was developing normally. It wasn't until later when we were starting preschool where there were more signs that he was like extra sensitive, but he's always been very joyful, very outgoing, and always moving, just has like so much energy. And there's just two stories that I wanted to talk about. I remember very early on, I can't remember, maybe it was like he was still like a toddler, but he became obsessed with space. And he, whether it was clay or styrofoam balls, or he was just always making the solar system in all different media. And then there was another time where he was obsessed with the song Take Me Home by Phil Collins. And I was just like, what is he talking about? He would want to hear that song over and over again, and he would sing along to it. So I don't know. Yeah.
And you said you're not sure if you have an Indigo child? Am I remembering correctly from 10 minutes ago? Wow, that's hilarious. Sounds like textbook Indigo child to me.
Well, I mean, I have strong suspicions, but I don't want to label him, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to like ask you about labels, but has your son been diagnosed as autistic on the
Yes.
spectrum?
Yeah. He's gotten evaluated by the school, and he's been diagnosed as ADHD and autism. So I know there's like there's a word that hybridizes those two together, but I don't know. I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Good. Yeah, as a former public school teacher for 36 years, yes, ran into a lot of kids with ADHD, especially in the later years. And yes, I was thinking about Indigo Children at that point. Ragnar, any thoughts, reflections to add?
Yeah, this one definitely makes me think of the telepathy tapes, especially the segment about them being pioneers. Um, for any of your viewers who are familiar with the podcast, it describes these kids who are almost exclusively severely autistic. Like they're nonverbal. They've got to type. If they communicate externally at all, it's like a Stephen Hawking thing where they got to type it out on a little pad and stuff like that. And I'm gonna nerd out a little bit here because I know some of your viewers will also be familiar with the scientist Rupert Sheldrake. He's been kind of turning things on their head for decades now, talking about consciousness being the foundation, not materialist matter. And he's got a theory that he refers to as the morphogenic field, which is just kind of the science term for the collective subconscious. And he describes it as being sort of stratified, where all the species on Earth have their own sort of frequency within the whole symphony of the collective subconscious, and that when members or individuals of a particular species get better at something, it propagates throughout their field and the rest of them. Like, for example, he's got one study where some lab rats, on one side of the planet were being compelled to navigate a specific type of puzzle or maze or something, and rats on totally with no connection to them on the other side of the planet just spontaneously got better at it. And it really makes me think of these kids coming in because telepathy is pretty latent in the general population right now. We're all doing it a little bit. I mean, everybody's got the thing where, it's you have a weird coincidence where you think of somebody and then the phone rings right then and it's them and that kind of thing. But in the telepathy tapes, these guys are fully, I mean, they can't read everybody, but they can usually read someone that they have a very special connection with, which is usually their mom, and they can communicate with each other. Um, and I mean, they're fully activated on that front. Like they can read their mom or their person just like an open book. And so interestingly, it seems like the veil is still so thick that they really can only have one toe in the 3D in order to be able to do that, because some of them need a person to be physically touching them to even realize that they're in a physical body.
Yeah.
So these guys are the ones coming in and really getting the ball rolling. They're sort of grounding this, and the more that they are doing that, the more it's going to propagate to the rest of us,
Nice.
according to morphogenic theory. So yeah, that
Nice.
really seems to track for me.
Yeah, I appreciate your sharing that. That reminds me of an older story, I guess, about the 100th monkey effect, which was about somebody who supposedly did a scientific study discovering a similar phenomenon with monkeys on an island. And I appreciate you bringing up the telepathy tapes. Definitely looking forward to hearing more about that as we go along. I'm sure many of our viewers have listened to those as well. And we'll probably get into it more when we get into the autism section of our episode. For now, did anybody else have anything to add about this passage before we look at a different passage on another subject? Sounds good. Well, let's take a look at a couple passages on Return of the Graduates. On September 17th, 2006, Quo said, "Many of your people have already graduated. For the last 30 years, you have been receiving, as children coming through the normal processes of procreation, wanderers from your own fourth density who have graduated from your present third density and who have realized all of the many options available to them now that they are dwellers within fourth density and have decided, naturally enough, that what they want to do in terms of service to others is to come right back to planet Earth and help the rest of the planet shift their consciousness to the value systems that are compatible with fourth density energy. Many of those who you now call indigo, oh, and I'm sorry, this is another passage. This is from September 27th, 2008. Quo said, many of those you now call indigo children are those who have graduated from planet Earth in the positive sense, have now gone on to acquaint themselves with their new fourth density homes, and have asked permission to return to third density as wanderers. The concern here is duple. Firstly, the wanderers wish to lighten the consciousness of the planet that there may be the largest possible harvest upon planet Earth at this time. They are aware, once they have entered fourth density and have been able to look at the situation from a larger point of view, that one person can make a difference by the way he thinks and by the way he lives. So they have given up their newly won fourth density living to come back to what this instrument would call spiritual boot camp in order to get into the thick of the fray, and in the heart of disharmony, create harmony, in the heart of fear, create love, in the heart of judgment, create compassion. Really beautiful passages, and I love the idea that these souls who just graduated into fourth density, rather than going on, as I'm guessing many of us would love to do, have chosen to come back in order to help the planet and help other souls to graduate in the graduation or harvest as it is known. Aram, any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
Yeah, this makes me think of my own child because he was born in 2014. And I think according to the Law of One material, or maybe it was through Quo, they said that the Earth was moving into fourth density in 2012. So yeah, I don't know if he is one of these wanderers who decide to come back, but um, I do think that uh, the way he chose me as his mom may be a reason why. I don't know if I'm a wanderer. I suspect I am, but um, I don't know if we have a pre-incarnative plan for that he chose to be born to someone who would eventually come across the Love One material. But yeah, that's something that I think about. Yeah, that I was maybe chosen by his spirit to help him through this density.
I would be super surprised if that was not the case. I mean, according to all the channeling sessions I've read, yeah, every soul plans each part of their incarnation very carefully from the day they're born to the day they leave the incarnation. That includes those entities who they choose to have as family members, specifically to help each other. So, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's a brave thing to choose to have a child who is autistic. That's a huge, heavy lift. I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
and I want to add that it's mutual. Like he's helped me so much on my journey. So, yeah.
Such a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, looking forward to hearing more about that also. Ragnar, did you have any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
Um, I can definitely attest to their efforts to help the rest of the planet shift their consciousness to the value systems that are compatible with fourth density energy, especially my oldest. I'd suspect that she's most likely come from fourth density. I know wanderers can come from, anywhere from fourth to sixth, but her values are very fourth density specifically. She definitely struggles with anything to do with, personal or societal boundaries, and just concepts of separateness. She's very confused at why we can't just go into any house on the street when we're out for a walk and just, hang out. Yeah, just little things like that. Yeah.
So fourth density. So fourth density. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, which means, I mean, it must be a real shock being of this age because they clearly do not fit in with third density, but they didn't come here to fit in with third density. They came here to fit in with fourth density, and that's a world that's still in a future yet to manifest. So, yeah, anything we do to help each other out along the way, it's got to be great. Raquel, anything to add?
Yeah, definitely. Firstly, the Wanderers wish to lighten the consciousness of the planet that they may be the greatest harvest possible. Well, that just makes me think about how important our harvest time is right now. I know we're aware of it, but I don't think we get it. Like, it's so important that you graduate and you're like, you see, you know, everything is revealed to you, and you're like, okay, I'm graduated, I'm in the clear, but you know what? I got to go help planet Earth because they need me. And that's what, like, it's that love that's within these souls that they're like, I need to go back and help because I'm trying to get everybody that wants to graduate to kind of like graduate. So if I can go back and, you know, just spread my love, my light, and just be of pure consciousness, I'm going to do it. And the reason I say that is because that's who my son is. And, you know, I don't want to sugarcoat this and act like, you know, he's like this, you know, a complete joy to take care of all the time, because he's not. He's a lot of work. But I will tell you this, he has this, he has this energy that everybody I bring him around, and he works with them because he's been working with me since he was born. And by working, I mean a consciousness work, being that he's been teaching me conditional love, acceptance. He's completely a sort, like, he sticks out. He's like a fireball walking. He's loud. He doesn't have any social cues here. He doesn't speak. It's just, I had to accept him the way he is. Like, for years, when he first was diagnosed, I was like, okay, I can help him, I can get him better, I can, you know, I can heal him. This was a thought process within me. I was like, I can help my son become more like how we are here on this planet, neurotypical. That was my thought process at the beginning, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, because a lot of parents go through that when they first get an autistic child. They're like, I don't want this. I want my child to be like the other children, and I'm going to do what I can. And that's what I did for quite a few years, you know, with supplements and diet, and tried to heal him in a way I thought was best for him. But that's not what he came here for. He came here to be his authentic, shining his light self. And I had to change my way and accept him for who he was. Like, he wasn't going to change. And that's what I'm noticing now. Everybody that's in his life that he works with, his therapist, his personal care worker, his teachers, they all think at the beginning that they could possibly come in and intervene and do some shifting there. And he's like, no. And this is what I said, no, he doesn't change. You have to change. So you have to grow in consciousness. And that was what he came back to do, was to help others around him. And he's doing what everybody that he encounters, random people, people that at school, his therapist, his personal care worker is now with us many days of the week. And even she has come up to me and said, I think he's communicates with me in my mind. And I've never said anything before. I even, you know, I've never said anything to her like that about it. And when she said that, I was like, yeah, I know. Because, like, what else can I say? I was like, yeah, I know. Because he's been doing it to me for years, and I didn't realize it at the time. That's how he communicates. But he is so not impressed with this world that he's like, I guess to us, this type of, you know, speaking is primitive. And so he's like, get with it, use your mind. I'm telling you things that you need to know with your mind. So communicate with me that way. And that's how he does with everybody. And unfortunately, we're the ones that have to catch up. And so when I see this line here about spiritual boot camp and thinking what they have to come back to go through, even though they've already went through it, it makes me think of two things. One, the planet has fully shifted, and there's a whole fourth density that we're not even aware of because they've already graduated through it. So that's one of the thoughts in my head. And the second is that how much they love this planet, and they just have so much love for the creator. I just want to come back and help.
Yeah, I appreciate your saying that. That last part is a really good segue into the next couple passages we have, I believe, about why they came back to help the planet. Did anyone have anything they wanted to share on this passage before we change topics?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Raquel said. It is, they're really here to teach unconditional love and patience.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that is what Quo has said more than a few times, but always bears repeating. Well, let's take a look at a couple passages about caring for Mother Earth. On September 7th, 2007, Quo said, "The Indigo agenda generally has a large area of concern for the planet itself. This is due to the fact that these entities are natives of this planet, having just graduated from third density Earth. They have graduated to fourth density positive and have immediately chosen to return to the Earth sphere in a dual activated third and fourth density body. Their physical body is third density, but they're wired, shall we say, to be able to absorb fourth density vibrations of love and understanding in a far less distorted way than those with only the third density wiring or DNA. They and all those who have come to this planet from elsewhere, from planets that have destroyed their habitat, or who come from Atlantis where they destroyed their habitat, have a great desire to offer to the earth restitution and stewardship that is based on love and protection rather on the desire to rape the earth for its resources." Harsh words at the end, but yeah, that is how I think it would be fair to say our approach as a society has been to Mother Earth, to rape and pillage for resources without really care or regard for stewardship and treating her with respect and love. And yeah, I can see how this feeling does come through a lot of the students that I've worked with and a lot of the younger people I meet, and many in there now in their 20s who still want to do whatever they can, either in a paid fashion or unpaid fashion, just to help the planet and care about the resources. Do you have any thoughts on anything here, Ragnar?
Well, I recall something of a statement made by Kuo that talks about the energetic implications of negative emotion and how that can manifest in assisting the destruction or the bad stewardship of the planet. And surprisingly to me, to such an extent that the activists and people judging the people who are actually seem to be trashing the place are themselves doing quite a bit of harm.
I remember
And
that session. Yeah, they
yeah,
said it's actually doing more harm. Yeah.
yeah, and it makes me think about how much my kids actually love to just watch David Attenborough and nature specials and stuff like that. And it kind of dawned on me one day because I have a neighbor, and one of his favorite things to do, because he just spontaneously wakes up really early in the morning. On Saturday, he'll just be up at 5. And his favorite thing to do is just drink a coffee, smoke some weed, and watch David Attenborough nature specials, and he just doesn't think much of it. But then one day I realized, like, he's doing an Earth meditation every Saturday morning. He's sending all this love to planet Earth and his love and marvel of all the creatures and the biodiversity. And I feel like just I mean, that's kind of a thoughts and prayers concept there, but um, yeah, it kind of made me think about how interested my kids are in animals and all these nature shows. So it makes me kind of wonder about that.
For sure. Yeah, that's a great example, great story. And yeah, Quo has said many times that our greatest service to others is just being here and existing, because just being here in incarnated third density bodies means that every moment we are taking that love light from the one infinite creator, or prana as they call it in Hindu traditions. It's flowing through our energy bodies and we're distorting it in however we do before we send it back out. So I can totally imagine that that guy who's drinking coffee and smoking weed and watching David Attenborough is, yeah, he's sending a lot of love out to the planet. And that is definitely the mission that we all came here to do in our own ways. It's beautiful. Raquel, anything to add?
Sure. I love that, different people, they find different rituals that they do with the planet or Mother Earth, however you want to describe it. But Before I get into what we would do, I know, something came to me as I read the bottom, um, where it says the desire to offer earth restitution and stewardship. It makes me think that, a lot of us don't understand reciprocity, like giving and receiving, and how we need to give back to the planet as much as we take from it. But I think when you up at the top, when they say a lot of the indigo agenda, yeah, I feel like a lot of the kids or young adults that are having the desire to protect wildlife, especially in the ocean, might be from the Atlantis and know that a lot of their kinship, I guess, had put their souls into the bodies of whales and different sea mammals. And because I have such an affinity to when I see a whale, or especially if they're trapped, it drives me crazy. But I just love seeing nature in that aspect, in that grandiose, like there's a whole side of the world that we don't take part in, like other than, swimming or whatever, but there's a whole other thing going on down there. And I feel like their desire to protect that is because they probably have a connection. And that would be the Atlantis connection. I don't know, it just came to me, and
Wouldn't be surprised. Would
yeah.
not be surprised. Yeah. It's such
Yeah,
a beautiful planet.
it is. Oh my gosh. When you watch those shows, like Ragnar was saying, just different nature shows, it just shows you so many aspects of what's going on. But when I took my son to the islands, which I'm in right now, in my dreams, but virtually I'm in the islands. Um, he loved it. Oh my gosh. He ate from the trees that we planted there, from the stuff we planted in the ground. We had so many trees that bear fruit on the land. We were just eating from it. And if we weren't eating from ours, we went to neighbors and we're eating from theirs. And we were just sharing in the community of nature. And he loved the ocean. Oh, today, like now, we can bring him anywhere to, and we'll have to drag him out till he's getting so wrinkly. We're like, come on, you gotta go. And he's like, no, this is my like life. So I'm like, he just loved nature and he could stay outside forever. So I find they do have this connection to the planet and to nature that a lot of us, I do, but a lot of us probably don't recognize nature as part of us, and they do. I think they recognize that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, appreciate your sharing that. I always marvel whether I'm watching David Attenborough videos or just looking out the window. What a beautiful paradise this planet is, a little island paradise on a little speck of dust in the universe. And I like to think that planet Earth is like the Hawaii of the universe. It is a tropical paradise compared to
Yeah, it's
most other
literally, yeah,
planets.
it's a gem in the universe, and that's why there's so many eyes and attention on it right now. So a
Sure,
lot of creation went into this. Appreciate it.
indeed. Aram, anything to add?
Yeah, I wanted to add that I feel like the Earth, the vibration of Earth right now, especially in fourth density, is such a resource, like emotionally, spiritually for all of us, but especially for these kids. Like, I'm part of a homeschooling group where most of the kids are neurodivergent, and every couple of months we go on a camping trip, a group camping trip, and I noticed that most of the time these kids sometimes have a hard time regulating their emotions. They're very sensitive. They kind of are glued to their screens. But when we're out in the middle of a national park and there's no Wi-Fi, these kids are like nourished by the earth and the trees and the water. Like you can see them, just their nervous systems are calmer out in nature, and they're receiving all this resource from the earth. And I feel like as the human population has shifted to these cities, and we're in this like modern fast-paced life, we've kind of become disconnected from the resource of nature itself. And then
For
I feel
sure.
like once they, just like Raquel was saying, once they receive that and know that they have that resource of the planet itself, like they're gonna want to give back to it. They're not gonna want to just take advantage of the earth.
Nice. Yeah, and those are all things that I think it's fair to say many indigenous cultures have known for centuries and have been trying to tell dominant society for a long time, and why perhaps a lot of people do find appeal and traction in learning about those ways of being closer to the earth and closer to earth spirits and earth vibrations. Definitely appreciate that. I think I had a second passage on this subject to look at. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to add on this passage before we switch? Cool. This one is from February 10th, 2008. And Quo said, "So at this time, there is a tremendous energy of new life and new growth upon your planet due to the influx of fourth density wanderers from your own planet. Those of you who have children know that these children are qualitatively different than the children that perhaps you knew as a child, or those children which have lived in centuries past. These are children who are able to run third density energy and light and fourth density energy and light. Therefore, to them, the veil is much thinner and the truth of love is much more obvious. So within these days, when 2012 has come and gone, information such as is collected and offered for sharing by this group shall be increasingly helpful because there will be far more interest in the spiritual as opposed to the religious, and those words which speak to the stewardship of the planet, as well as those words which speak of unconditional love and the oneness of all things, shall be as meat and drink to those who are searching for the way to be of maximum service at this time." Yeah, it's worth noting that the year 2012, of course, was talked about a lot in the years leading up to it, since that is, I believe, the last year of the Mayan calendar and was forecasted to be like the end of one age and the beginning of the new age. And certainly in the years leading up to it, there are many questions and many discussions from Quo and other Confederation entities about whether the world was going to end in 2012 or what it was going to look like. And think it fair to say, with the benefit of hindsight, that the world as we know it did not end in 2012, not in terms of big natural disasters or anything. But I think any objective person looking back at the years and everything that has happened since 2012 could say, does seem like the earth has really shifted dramatically in these last 10 plus years. And how I could see that, yeah, it really does feel like the end of third density world as we know it, and really beginning of fourth density. Although I think Ross said that fourth density officially started like back in the mid 1930s or something like that. So it's only been growing and increasing since. Raquel, any thoughts, reflections on this passage?
Um, yeah, well, from what you were saying, I thought that came into my mind is that, for those of us that are hoping or wishing for something, huge or globally shocking to happen, I don't think that's how it's going to work out. I think you're going to know this information through death, because that's how you're going to either walk the steps of light or you're going to see what's going on so that you can plan for your next incarnation. So I don't think this big global catastrophe or this one thing is going to happen. I don't think that's how from what I'm understanding, that's not how harvest works. Harvest works from when you pass through, you die, and you either walk the steps of light or you plan for your next incarnation. And so I don't think we should be wishing and hoping for something to happen here on this planet that's going to let us know that we're now in fourth density. I don't think that's how it's going to work. So just wanted everybody to have that kind of thought process maybe and figure it out for themselves. I'll also say this was funny, where it says you basically uh, the one unconditional love and oneness of all things shall be as meat and drink to those who are searching for the way of maximum service at this time. I relate that to my son. I feel like his fuel is food and love. He takes in a lot of that. And I'm telling you, he requires a lot of love and food. So, and I guess that's how he transmute his love. I don't know. He's like a machine. He takes in food, then he wants his love, and it's a cycle of food, love, food, love. And I'm like, so I had to get other people in on the loving because like I'm always cuddling and he loves, you have to center him. He does not know his body is here sometimes. So Ragnar was right when he was speaking about that. And, he needs a lot of scratches, he needs hugs, he needs, for you to squeeze him and let him know he's here, he's anchored on this planet. And he just requires like hugs and kisses and snuggles and from anybody. He doesn't even care who you are. Like if he knows you, not just like a random stranger, but if you're his like therapist, his person, he's like, listen,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to give me some love because I need it. And so
Yeah.
I see him doing that with others, and I'm like, I'm glad that he's able to share that love, and they're able to share back the love with him because that's him teaching them that this is what I require. I require love, and since he was born, that's what he's been getting from me. And then, he taught me that that's what I need, and that's what I keep giving him. I speak to him completely different than my daughter. I speak to
So,
him in
for any of our viewers who might have similar experiences as parents, any tips on what you do to replenish yourself when you feel like you're kind of drained of all the love that you had to give at that time?
yeah, like yesterday. So it happens frequently. I felt like I'd given him the full day, and then at the evening, he still needed more attention after I've tucked him in and everything. And I was like, this choice, pre-incarnative or not, it's not without frustration. I'm still on this planet as a human person. But what I do is now that I've gone through the process, at the beginning it used to be frustrating, but now that I've gone through the process, what I do is I find ways to take care of myself in a self-care type of way, meaning I play music, I've joined my meditation groups. I have my own outlet now that doesn't involve me just being his caregiver and making sure I support and love him and my daughter. I have my groups that I join, and we talk about stuff that I love talking about. I meditate. I have my creative projects. So I basically focus on myself as well. I no longer only focus on my kids, that was my focus at one point. And it's not good being a martyr or thinking you're just, your kids are everything. It's
Right.
actually a disservice. You need to focus on yourself as well. And
Right.
so I learned that lesson the hard way. So yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was asking. I'm sure there are many, many parents, viewers watching this who can relate in some way to what you're talking about. And I would agree, yeah, that self-care is important and whatever one chooses to do to maintain that balance of love and wisdom, I think is a good thing. Aram, did you have any thoughts, reflections to add?
Yeah, in regards to like receiving love, I noticed that, you know, when when COVID hit and we all had to isolate and, we were not able to like hug other kids or, I remember we early on we'd have to go to the park and at the time he was 5 and he's one of those kids that is just like he just runs up to people and just hugs them, like complete strangers. And, it was so hard during that time when we were all like, no, you have to stay 6 feet apart. Like he could not go and see another child outside and not just want to run up to them and to have to like, keep them apart, separate them was just like so difficult and heartbreaking. And now, now that things are open again and it's, I'm realizing the way that I can help myself, not get burnt out is to allow other people to, give him love, even if it's, in small ways. Sometimes I get overprotective and I notice when people are looking at him disapprovingly, but then I realize there's also a lot of people that like appreciate him and love his energy. Like I'm thinking of a cashier at our local grocery store. He always goes in and like every time he goes in there that he has like a new joke to tell the cashier and they have this like really great interaction and it's just like I appreciate the people that can see him for who he is and love him, regardless of how kind of strange or different he is to like to people who can only see from a third density perspective.
Yeah, I appreciate your sharing that. Those are all great stories, great examples. I'm curious, just out of curiosity, what do you think would be the would happen if you just let him go hug a stranger at the park while you were like there to supervise?
I
Do you
mean,
think it would be a bad thing to just let him do that?
I oftentimes let him, be outgoing. It really, I try to read the openness of the person.
Hmm.
Sometimes they're not open, and
Hmm.
sometimes he gets upset because there are people who will, kind of energetically or outwardly reject him.
Hmm.
And I try to soothe him when he does receive that rejection. And then I encourage him to just, you know, um, to seek out the people that love him unconditionally. And sometimes it's hard because not all of my friends are able to do that. And sometimes it's easier in situations where the people I barely know will actually see him for who he is.
Nice. No, it makes sense. Yeah, totally. I appreciate that. I think it's part of the challenge that everyone faces as parents, how to balance the feeling of the need to teach them how to conform to third density values and how to let them express fourth density values as comes naturally to them. And as you're saying, it depends on each situation, I'm sure, and the people involved. Ragnar, anything to add? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I've definitely struggled with that. Um, Especially with my oldest, just running up to people in the park. Like there'll be another set of parents with their kid playing in the park, and she just runs right up to them like she's part of the gang. Like, hey, what are we playing, guys? And the kids are usually receptive, but the parents are like often clearly not. They're kind of looking around like, whose kid is this? And yeah, you have that pressure of conforming to societal norms, and also maybe a little bit of empathy for the parents that are kind of weirded out by it. But on the other
So,
hand,
what do you
it's
say to them in that situation?
I mean, we do need more of this. I mean, I'm not exactly Johnny on the spot in terms of shutting it down. I'll kind of let it ride a little bit, and then if I see that they're like getting ready to leave or they're clearly uncomfortable, I'll kind of come and try to gently redirect, like, hey, come check this out, to my kid, and just kind of try to let it play out to some extent. Because I think that even though maybe this is presumptuous of me, but I think that even though that those parents are made uncomfortable by that, that they could use a little bit of practice in that openness. Maybe that could be good for them. But
That's what I
yeah,
was
that's just,
thinking.
I mean, it's these kids are, what is this? It would say these, you may have noticed these children are qualitatively different than the children that you knew as a child. Oh yeah, that is okay. So our house is like the kind of the central hub of all the neighborhood kids. They sort of congregate here. So I get a firsthand look at this, and they are clearly different than than how we were when we grew up. I mean, okay, so first, when I was a kid, the boys and girls kind of segregated themselves more. The boys definitely played a lot more like violence oriented stuff. It was, cops and robbers and pretend shootouts and stuff like that. I don't see any of that really going on so much as anymore. The age groups segregated themselves a lot more. We have a gang of kids that ranges from the ages of 5 to like 11, and they all play and hang out together. And sometimes the 11-year-olds will just hang out with the 5-year-old if she's the only one out that day, which is super weird to me because
That
when I
does seem
was
unusual. Yeah.
when I was 11, we would not hang out with a kindergartner. They'd be like, that's dumb. Those kids are little and lame, and you would be seen as uncool to be doing that. But the kids that are like these 11-year-olds that are coming around, they sort of naturally adopt sort of like an older sibling type of. They're very gentle and kind, and they kind of give them guidance and stuff, and just naturally sort of fall into that role. And
Nice.
yeah, it's very interesting to see. They're all very conflict averse. Multiple of them will just, as soon as voices start to get raised, they just leave and go cry, and they're just not equipped for any of that. And Yeah, it's very different, but it's
That's what I
encouraging.
do too. Yeah. Which is why I never get invited to parties. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate your sharing that. And yeah, I think I have been mindful of this passage many times whenever I'm having a conversation with an adult or a child or younger person, that speaking in words about stewardship of the planet or unconditional love or the oneness of all things is a nice way to bring the law of one into a conversation without necessarily like talking about the law of one, but things that maybe feel like food and meat and drink to those who are really resonating with that kind of message. Did anybody have any thoughts before we change topics? Got a few more passages to look at.
I had a quick
Anything else on this one?
I had a quick follow up. Well, I just wanted to riff off of what both Aram and Ragnar were saying about acceptance of your child from society and other people. I mean, it's he is so challenging for them to accept that it's always an issue. Like, where if we go out, it's obvious. He's obvious. We get a lot of stares. Us in the family, we had to figure out how to handle that. And, you know, it took a while for me and my daughter, she's, the sister of, yes, she might, be spiritually adept and in terms of, understanding spiritual concepts at a young age, but this is still an issue for her. And the siblings, they struggle a lot. And I know this has probably been brought up in the telepathy tapes as well, how other siblings handle when their sibling is like severely on the spectrum and or so unaccepted by society. How do you deal with that? It's such a hard thing for her to come to grips with. And it's the same lesson that I had been going through, and how I went through was that I just had to accept him, and she's still going through the process of accepting him. And that's what society has to come to, the acceptance of others different from themselves, but still being able to love them. And so they're teachers on so many levels when you really think
Yeah.
about it. But it's a difficult lesson, and it takes time for each person to really receive that lesson.
Yeah, appreciate your sharing that. And it is a good reminder that we have been told that acceptance is the key to processing catalyst on the service to others path, whereas control is key to processing catalyst on the service to self path. So learning these lessons about acceptance of others is definitely a plus, definitely a positive thing.
Yeah, who are completely different from you. We want to
Right,
accept people that are similar to us and they're kind of in our group. No, you have to accept somebody that's so completely different from you and still
right,
see them as the creator and love them regardless.
right. Yeah, and you have black skin too, which is like another obstacle that needs to be overcome. You definitely chose the most difficult player settings in this video game, I gotta say.
Hey,
Kudos to you. Huge
the
respects to you.
thing is, like, you know, I think I can do this shit level. That was
Mhm.
me. Oh, I think I can do this shit. I can't.
Yeah.
I
And
can't.
look at you, you're doing it. Not that it's been easy, not that you haven't been like feeling like quitting many times, but hey, you made it this far. And that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Well, thank you. Let's go ahead and take a look at a passage about Misfits. On January 20th, 2006, Quo said, "These entities are equipped with the ability to withstand a tremendous amount of disharmony and chaos. They do not do this with a great deal of native joy, but their makeup is such that they are capable of independent action and have little use for the traditional kind of authority which expresses itself in your established religions and those cultural icons such as the classical philosophies and so forth. To these entities, the earth itself is speaking. These entities are often called the Indigo Children or the Crystal Children. There are many words that try to describe the difference betwixt this generation of wanderers and previous ones. The hallmark of this breed is an insensitivity to traditional modes of expressing religious dedication, while maintaining a great sensitivity and an authentic feeling for the most intensive kind of work and consciousness that is chosen by the self, for the self, and created as an individual expression rather than being a great desire to become part of an already established religion. Nevertheless, and this last generation of wanderers, there remains a feeling for the group. So you will find entities in all three generations whose interests include the desire to reconnect with their families. I believe this passage was part of a response to a question where they were talking about different waves of wanderers came through. They noted that there was a wave of wanderers that came through at the beginning of US history at that time. There was another wave of wanderers that came through in the 60s as the hippie generation. And now they're describing to this current wave or generation of wanderers. Really beautiful thing. I'm reminded of when they're talking about institutions and disrespect for traditional ones. It certainly reminds me of what seems to be the upheaval of political institutions in the United States and how that may well be part of this, as well as I think they have said other times that, yeah, the institutions that we know of now are going to be very, very different, are almost unrecognizable in fourth density. And it looks like these Indigo Children may well have a part of that. You have any thoughts on anything here, Aram?
Yeah, I might wait until we have the telepathy discussion.
Sure,
But yeah, I have some thoughts, but I'll wait.
sure. Ragnar, anything?
I would actually be curious to hear your perspective on that because you've got the front row seat as a public school teacher, or you did before retirement, and I'm sure you noticed a difference in how the classroom operated over the past couple decades or so.
I don't think I really, for folks who didn't know, viewers, I was a public school teacher for about 36 years. I taught seventh grade, eighth grade for about 10 years, and then high school science at a public high school for about 26 years or something like that. And I definitely saw a lot of changes over time. I could definitely say the work of teaching and the experience of working with children was way different in the last 10 years than, say, the first 10 years or maybe even 20 years. But I don't know if I saw that much that they're talking about in this specific passage as far as little use for traditional kind of authority or established religions. I think we just didn't necessarily have that many conversations about that in a biology class, but it's certainly something I'm seeing in youth now, whether I have personal encounters with them or what I'm seeing in media or what I see just around me in the world there. That does, I think people understandably have less trust of our political institutions. And for sure, attendance at all mainstream Protestant churches has been consistently going down in decades. So that's probably not a really satisfying answer to your question. Sorry about that. Did you have
Yeah.
any other thoughts or any questions about anything here?
Well, I have another friend who is also a public school teacher, and I mean, the public school teacher is one of the first major, I mean, besides your parents, figures, authority figures that you're expected to contend with. And I mean, she describes these kids as, I mean, you would think these kids are all love and light, and how, well, maybe that manifests a little differently than you'd expect because she describes these kids as just the worst. They don't respect her authority at all. They curse her out. They're just ignoring her and yelling and throwing stuff at each other in the class. And so, yeah, I guess that would kind of come into the whole system busting. But I mean, yeah, from her perspective, doesn't feel like love and light, you know?
Yeah, well, it is important to remember, and I reminded myself of this every day that I went to school for the last several years, that those kids aren't in your class because they want to be in your class. They're there because they have to be there. It is not really that different from doing time in jail, although I suppose the food is better. Gym is better, but yeah, they're there because they have to. And while you might find some kids who still enjoy the learning process and still enjoy their teachers or still enjoy the learning or just being with friends, yeah, most kids, if they didn't have to be there, would probably be someplace else. So that part I totally get.
True that.
Raquel, any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
Absolutely. This is where my daughter comes in. She is they're talking about her right here. She is both a system buster, authority, I don't want to hear it person. I'm just a free soul living my life and gonna be as authentic to myself as possible. Yeah, it's a problem. And I say it's a problem, not in like in a good and a bad way. One, I'm proud. Two, not so much when she's doing it to me, not listening to me and my guidance and stuff. And yeah, she has these issues at school already where she's like, since she was young, not even now as a teenager, because okay, so my kids, my son just turned 13, she just turned 15. And my daughter has been a teenager since she was 5. And then also an adult now that she's 15. So what I mean by that is that when she was in grade 1, or was it? I think it was grade 2, Miss Simon was her teacher. And Miss Simon was telling her stuff from her textbook. And she said she raised her hand and said, question what Miss Simon was telling her. And Miss Simon was like, my daughter's name is Dia. Dia, that's not in your textbook. In your textbook is where you're supposed to get. And she's like, no, no, no. I have a question that's not in my book. And she said she kept trying to ask Miss Simon, and Miss Simon looked at her like, stop questioning, stop asking me questions that are not in the book, And
Yeah.
so then she was like this person that's like, why is this like that? Why is that like this? Why can't they do this? And I'm not somebody who lives their life where I'm studying the law of one and all these higher principles and not live it. So my life and my kids know, just like if I was a Christian, they would know I'm studying, Christianity. So they know that I study what I study and what my philosophy is. And so when she as she's growing up, I'm teaching her this stuff, and so she knows. And what's happening now at school is that she's encountering kids her age that are not as aware as she is. And she said, she comes to me, she's like, Mom, my friend noticed something. It's like when there's a glitch in the matrix, notice something, and I want to talk to her about it, but I don't know if I can say it. So she's afraid to actually express herself as somebody more aware. So to Ragnar's thing is that some of them are and some of them aren't. And we have to remember that they're still kids and they're still processing because they're not fully into their awareness yet. They're kind of like, you know, they're more conscious for sure, but they're still have to go through their process of fully like coming into their own development of consciousness. And I see that with her completely. Like she struggles, she thinks nobody likes her because she's so authentic in her dressing and her style. And she's like, none of the boys look at me. And I'm like, because they can't handle you being so authentically yourself, and I tell her not to worry about that stuff. It's okay to be you. And I encourage her, but it does work against me sometimes when I'm like trying to get her to also be disciplined. And so that's a line that I had to establish with her, like boundaries and discipline, and still
Right.
allowing her to be who she is.
Right. Yeah, and I believe we've got a couple passages related to that and other parenting tips, but I appreciate your sharing that for sure. I would think that is probably one of the most important parenting tips for indigo children or any child, which really is to teach them to be themselves. That is what we are told as adults in the law of one, that the greatest service to others, the greatest service to the creator is to really be who you are on the deepest level, because on the deepest level, you are the one infinite creator. So I would think that's a really valuable message for children to hear, especially if they feel like they're just not fitting into the world around them.
And I would say
Aram?
real quickly, when I tried to change my son, like trying to get him to be different than he was, being neurotypical, we struggled. We struggled immensely. Our life was sad. Nothing was happening for us. Like we were stagnant and not flourishing as a family because I was like, I'm trying to get him to be as normal as possible. And so it's very important to just let people be who they are, and that includes yourself.
Yeah. Not always easy, but a good rule of thumb, I think. Aram, was there something you wanted to add?
Yeah, just, little use for the traditional kind of authority. I think, one of the reasons why I homeschool my kid is because, they're like what Ragnar was saying earlier, we have this kind of an older version of authority where it's like kind of you do as I say, top down, and sometimes the teacher's attitude is very much like I'm the authority figure here and you just listen to what I say. And I
For sure.
really empathize with teachers because I feel like the structure that has evolved into the current school system, a lot of it has to do with like testing and standardized testing and a curriculum, and a lot of it is like conformity. A lot of it is trying to you know um, get get kids to all learn the same curriculum and then test well on it, and I don't know if it's tied to funding, but I suspect it is. But um, you know I, I, the experience that I had with my kid being in school for a couple years was really disheartening. I would see, um, you know, I felt bad for the teachers because it seemed like an impossible job because a lot of their time was spent on classroom management and, trying to manage the needs of like 26 different children. They couldn't do it. So a lot of them were just like falling through the cracks. Like my son in particular would just, be drawing the whole time, and it really feels like an impossible task. And I had so much admiration for the teachers that were able to do it, and the thing that I noticed about the ones that were able to do it well, they had so much empathy, and they really like felt what the kids were feeling and could empathize with them versus the teachers that were just like, you just have to listen to me, and yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, and I totally empathize with you wanting to homeschool your kid instead of subjecting him to that kind of training and indoctrination. I think it would be fair to say that, yeah, teachers in the public school system are really trained to educate kids to be slaves, to be part of a slave economy, to work for a system that is clearly meant to exploit them for the maximum degree, and to be consumers and just keep buying shit and don't argue and don't question the system. And
For them.
anyone who does, as you can see, yeah, it's a difficult thing. But, I'm reminded there are stories, the world is, again, literally coming to an end. The world, the third density world as we know it, literally is ending right in front of us in slow motion. And in many ways, it reminds me of the 9/11 attacks on the Twin Towers. There were bosses there who were insisting their workers not panic and not leave the building as they wanted to. They insisted that they stay there until the whole thing collapsed on them. And I think it's a kind of a similar analogous thing to just don't question the system, just keep working, keep being a happy slave. This is what we want you to be. Sorry, that ended on a downer note. Anybody have any other thoughts to add before we take a look at another passage on another topic? Sounds good. Well, let us go ahead and take a look at what Quo has said about children with autism. This is going to be a long passage. It's going to take a couple slides to read through, but I figured if there is anyone watching this who has a child with autism or knows a child with autism, you'd probably really want to hear as much as you could of what Quo said. So this is part of what they said on December 28th, 2019. The challenge of those diseases, as they are called, Asperger's and autism, are to be able to put forth another way of being, another way of seeing, another way of communicating, for entities with these conditions have another way of being. They are here to not only expand their own consciousness as they move into the fourth density of love and understanding, but to offer to those about them the opportunity to see another way of being, another way of communicating, another way of accomplishing the life's journey. For this type of seeing is that which moves beyond the normal third density level of perception and recognition and acceptance. There is far, far more to the third density experience of each entity within the third density than is realized by most entities residing therein. Those entities with what is called the Asperger syndrome or autism have a connection to the one creator that is unlike the normal type of connection that most entities experience. Their connection is one that is more refined in some ways, and that there is an unconscious transmission of unity to the conscious mind, so that those entities so demonstrating these conditions may share this increased level of beingness with others about them. In order to do so, there is the challenge of accepting the self as being other than most other entities about one. The peer pressure of the third density illusion is most great, and it is difficult for entities with differences such as these entities have and exhibit to move beyond this peer pressure. But once this is done, and once they can see that they shine like the sun, in many ways more effectively, more poignantly, and more clearly than most third density entities, then these conditions can become means by which most other third density entities can expand their own awareness, not only of what is possible for others, but of what is possible for the self as it attempts to move further and further along, or closer and closer in tune with the one infinite creator within the self, within all other selves, and within the creation as a whole. This type of movement is that which each entity on planet Earth is here to share with others. There are no two entities that are the same. All entities have the one infinite creator inside of them, within their being. And this type of experience of the one infinite creator, in whatever degree it is experienced and shared with others, is that which is of the greatest value to all about one so able to share. Beautiful passage here, and certainly speaking to things that we have already said several times today, but much appreciated hearing it from a social memory complex and advanced spiritual entities such as these. Ragnar, did you have any thoughts on anything from this passage?
Oh yeah. My eldest is on the autism spectrum, and she clearly, there's a lot of game rules in third density that are contrary, especially to being authentic, and she struggles with those a lot. It's kind of as if they have sort of an unconscious or a latent memory of how things are supposed to be, and they're not that way here. There's a lot of strange, weird social games and things that you have to learn these rules to, and they don't, I mean, to her, they don't make any sense, and they seem completely backwards, and she struggles with it, and they have an authenticity that can come across as overly forward and rude at times. So, yeah.
I think that's true of all wanderers. I'm guessing that everyone who sees themselves as a wanderer probably felt that way too, because they remember the densities where they came from, and it sure as hell wasn't anything like what we're experiencing here on Earth. But maybe more so for maybe more so for these children because they are more wired for fourth density, and the veil is thinner for them, and they have perhaps a better memory of where they came from in fourth density.
Absolutely. Um, they do seem to be doing a lot of work in integration and talking about acceptance and such. Another observation I've made about the just observing the gang of neighborhood kids that's kind of fluttering around all the time is because there's one girl who um, the parents seem to be like pretty strict and authoritarian, and they've the people and other people in the neighborhood notice the parents, and I think that's reflected in the kid a bit too because she's extremely domineering. She's very bossy. Um, and she's in constant conflict with all the other kids in the neighborhood. And at my age, she would be just ostracized. I mean, they would just tell her to go away, and not only that, but they would reinforce each other in like making fun of her, and it would become a thing, and that's kind of how that would be handled. But these kids just refuse to do that. They will not ostracize her. They're constantly trying to work with her and trying to sort of integrate her into the group, and to the point where they need advice. Like we have to step in a little bit here and there. Like there's one, like she'll say to one of the other kids, "Hey, come over here and let me we're gonna play this game and we're gonna play it how I want to play it, and try to segregate him from the group and stuff. And we see it happening, and then later we come up to the kid that she was sort of taking control of, and we kind of be like, "Hey, how's it going?" And she'll be like, "Oh yeah, she's making me do this and that," and we have to kind of advise, like, it's you, you're a sovereign individual, and if you are not comfortable with something that is being asked of you, it's okay to say no. Just
Wow.
yeah.
What a
So
powerful teaching. What a powerful lesson. And done the way that you're describing sounds like a very loving way of helping them understand the dynamics between service to self and service to others entities in that
definitely.
small way. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Raquel, anything to add?
Yeah, now that we're on the subject of autism, I think this would be a good time to talk about or speak to families that either have this thought in their mind that why so many kids are being diagnosed with autism, and what's happening within the pharmaceutical industry and the environment and food industry, big food, all that, right? And I was one of those parents that when my son first got diagnosed, I was like, what's going on? How did this happen? I'm healthy, his father's healthy, there's no pre disposition to this. Like, what's happening? And so I went in search for answers, and I was deep diving, and a lot of stuff comes up. Right now the rate of autism is, it says here, 1 in 34 children. And it affects, and then even when it affects people of color, the effect is even worse. And so we have to ask ourselves, like, why is this happening, and how do we relate this to the law of one? And initially, we thought, okay, they're injecting these kids, the kids are coming up, losing their ability to speak, developmental delays, all this stuff. But then when I zoomed out and I had the perspective now from the law of one, I realized, okay, a lot of kids are coming back from the Fort Density, just graduated, and they don't really want to go through too much of the processes of like being so immersed in this life anymore. They're just here to help, And how do they help the most? Well, I can come in a body where I just have to be love and light and give another person a chance to take care of me, where that person has to learn unconditional love. And so if you really look at it from a law of one perspective, with all the kids now that are suddenly having autism, being on the spectrum, having all these different developmental issues, the law of one says that this is kids coming back trying to help. The people that are us that are living here, we're struggling because we're like, what happened? What's going on? What's doing this to my children? You know what I mean? And so I guess I'm speaking to the mothers out there that I was one of them that was like, okay, something's happening to my kid, and I know it's from this part, this way, that. What I had to do was I had to come to the realization, like, okay, it has happened. I had to accept that. And I by no way stop helping my son. I still feed him well. I still give him good supplements. I still try to make sure he stays healthy. I still try to help him reach milestones. Not because he is like the way he has autism and he's the way he is that I'm just going to stop helping him. No, I haven't stopped, but I don't have that intense urge to change him. I help him and be his guide and his support and love him. But yeah, when I zoomed out, my perspective was very small at first, where I'm like, he was injected, he got autism that way, the food was terrible. That was my perspective at one point. And then when I zoomed out and understood through the lens of the law of one, and I could see, okay, well, on a grander scheme, a lot of these kids and why there's so much more happening is possibly that they are coming back just to help. And the way they're helping is not by being so immersed in the world, is staying, keeping a foot in the fourth density, but having people from the third density help them and expand
Right.
their consciousness that way.
Yeah, as they're saying in that part in blue in the first paragraph here, they're not here just to expand their own consciousness, but to offer those about them the opportunity to see another way of being, another way of communicating, another way of accomplishing the life's journey. I would say that is a super important thing to remember.
Yeah, it's huge in the news right now with JFK being, the health minister and
RFK Jr.
RKG, sorry. Why do I I always confuse those two. But anyway,
How he got elected.
but exactly, Jonathan, don't start. You've been waiting to jump in on that for a minute. But yeah, it's big right now, and they're trying to figure out what is the spike in autism. And I wanted the question answered like 10 years ago. So I'm like, but now I've come to a more understanding of, consciously of what is the reasoning. But yeah, a lot of people still want to know what is the reason. And it's hard to tell somebody look at it from a spiritual aspect, right? But that's kind of where they're going to have to go in order to really get any true answers.
Well said.
My opinion.
Appreciate it. Aram, anything to add?
Yeah, yeah, at least my own experience with my own child and the other kids that I know that are on the spectrum, there is this, they're like super strong-willed and they have their preferences and they're it's like really hard to convince them sometimes that to to not um do the thing that they prefer. And I sometimes I think, if you think about um, all of our reincarnations, all of our incarnations, and like all the lifetimes that we've accumulated, and how much we've gleaned from those lifetimes, I do think, kind of similar to what Ragnar was saying, there may be a stronger memory, a deeper like soul level memory of what um, those preferences are, and their willingness to stick to them and not conform to someone else's idea of what they should be, or be convinced to do. And yeah, that's the challenging part, I think, for other people and parents and authority figures. It's like they already know what they want. There's already kind of like, at a soul level, they understand um, what their life in this incarnation is about, and you can't convince them otherwise. It's really hard to convince them otherwise, and it's like nurturing that and respecting that instead of trying to make them into something that they're not, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate your sharing that. And reminds me, I think I forgot to mention that my wife and I have two kids of our own. They're in their 20s now, and the older one identifies as cis female, uses pronouns she and her. And the second one, who we raised as a girl, came out to us later in their early 20s as agender and asexual, and appears to be possibly somewhere on the autism spectrum. Haven't been diagnosed as anything, but do realize they're neurotypical. And I realized as they were in their 20s that I was having a hard time communicating with them. It seemed like it was more difficult than before. And I was wondering what was wrong, what had gone wrong. And then I think I realized at some point, oh, well, nothing's wrong. They just decided they're going to stop communicating the way I communicate and just force me basically to communicate with them the way they communicate. And it's like, that was a big breakthrough, I think, for me in realizing, oh, okay, they had been trying to conform to my neurotypical way of thinking all this time, whereas I was not appreciating and respecting and working with them as a neurodivergent person. So, yeah, I think so many lessons for all of us in learning to understand and appreciate different ways of being. I think before we go, I did want to come back to the telepathy tapes because I have not watched a single episode of it, but I know a lot of our viewers have watched the telepathy tapes, some, if not all of them. And I know the three of you have watched at least a few episodes. Was there anything that you remember that you picked up in the telepathy tapes that really kind of aligns really well to the Law of One, or anything that we've talked about so far? I think I'll just open up to any of the panelists. Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I'd like to share a story and I'll try to make it brief. This was long before the telepathy tapes ever came out. I, a couple years ago, I had an astrology mentor that I actually met through the Seattle Law of One group. And, he's older gentleman, and obviously on the spectrum. Well, maybe not obvious, but definitely on the spectrum. And I remember him doing a reading for my son, and he told me that like things would change for him, like kind of neurologically around the age of 10, and that ended up being true. But one of the things that he told me, because at the time I was struggling, I think anyone with an autistic child knows like sometimes how intense their meltdowns are, and
Hmm.
they get very emotional, and it's like really hard. And I remember those times I would try to like soothe him with words and talk to him, or like try to calm him down by saying things to him, and it almost made would make things worse. It would escalate the distress, if you tried to like use words. And this astrology mentor, he told me that that I should start communicating with him telepathically. And I knew exactly what he meant when he said that. It just clicked instantly. And so the next time my son had like a big emotional outburst, I didn't use words. I just, it was just being present with him, radiating that love, looking into his eyes. And it was like magic. It was like he calmed down almost immediately. And, it wasn't, I want to be clear when I say telepathically, it's not like I was hearing words coming from him, and I don't know if he's hearing words coming from me, but my thinking is in my mind, my thoughts are like, I love you, I'm here for you, I'm with you. And I think that regardless of whether he's picking up on the words or not, unless you're like a really like Oscar winning actor, I think that most people cannot like their thoughts come across in their face, even in the most tiniest micro expressions.
For
And
sure.
kids, sensitive kids especially, can pick up on that. So if
Okay.
your words don't match how you feel, if you're really angry and frustrated inside, that that's something that they're going to pick up on. If you are radiating love to them, they can feel that. And so that's what I knew what he meant when he said to communicate with him telepathically. It's like I don't know, or I don't hear him. We communicate, but it's like in a nonverbal way, and it's almost just like through direct feeling and compassion. And
Yeah,
when you have compassionate thoughts, I feel like that's broadcast from you as a being, in many
for
different
sure.
ways that don't involve words.
Yeah, vibrations. I would not be surprised if they were picking up on vibrations. And also, for sure, the face and micro expressions and the eye to eye contact, for sure. I know when we were talking to our kids as babies, we would not really talk to them in baby talk that much, but oftentimes, if there was something important we need to say, we would just use a really calm voice and just try to look at them and let them pick up what we meant from our tone of voice and from our facial expressions too. So yeah, I think there's a lot to that. Excuse me. Raquel Ragnar, did you have any thoughts, reflections on anything you picked up from the telepathy tapes that aligns well with the law of one or what we've been talking about?
There was one case that I found pretty interesting described in the telepathy tapes because the law of one mentions several times the use of crystals and how powerful they are, and even how they were integrated into Atlantean technology and stuff like that. And when I was first reading that stuff, I thought it was kind of funny because, the New Age type of philosophy is usually one of the main things that they're associated with and that gets made fun of is their fascination with crystals. So
There are
seeing,
memes about it. Yeah.
yep. But in the telepathy tapes, they describe one of these kids, and a family friend or somebody brings over a box of crystals that she says she's prayed over. And this kid was immediately fixated on these, and he grabbed them out of her hand and was, give me these, I want this. And he ran straight to his room, and he lined them all up right next to his bed so he could just be like as close as possible to him. And I think when they ended up, getting through to him and being able to communicate with him more, he described him like having a positive energy associated with him. That this lady's praying over these crystals had really charged them up in ways that were perceptible to this kid. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
That's cool. Yeah, that's a great story. Thank you for sharing. Not surprised. Raquel, anything come to mind? Anything to share?
Yeah, well, I heard about the telepathy tapes from our group meetings and particularly Josh in our group. And, when they were talking about it, they started asking me questions and I just started telling them about my life and about my son. And I didn't know it lined up so much that they were like, oh yeah, he does it. And I was like, so the telepathy tapes, it's like I'm kind of living it. So at this point, I just had to go through what was happening at home. And one of the things that was happening, two of the things I remember from, because I've only heard like 3 episodes, so I won't like act like I've listened to the whole thing. Um, but uh, two of the episodes did correlate with what was happening in our real life. One of them was that my son, like I said, I believe he communicates with us through the mind using telepathy. And how I know that is because one, our personal care worker that who just started coming with, besides me having this connection with him for all these years and understanding him that way, and even my daughter to an extent, even though she isn't quite aware of it, she'll say something is like, you want this one? Okay, I know you want this. She'll just know as well as I do. But when the complete stranger just came in and suddenly said that to me, I believe he's communicating with me in my mind. I said, like I told you before, yeah, I know. But one of the funny stories was that we have a pantry and he loves taking snacks and, and we have to limit him because health reasons and stuff. So we have a key for the pantry and we lock it. And I hid the key because, I don't want him getting the key and going in there and taking what he wants. I hid the key. And I put it in, normally we keep the key in one position, but because he was going in there so often, I took it and I hid it. And then all of a sudden, he's way across the room. I hid the key behind something. He's across the room. He's doing something else, fidgeting with something. He gets up from what he's doing, goes wherever I hid the key, took it, and put it back in the place where it normally goes. And I was like, how did you even know where I hid the key? Because like I literally tucked it under something away from the normal space. And that's when I realized that he doesn't just communicate with us in our minds, but he could actually see our thoughts possibly, because there's times where I'm thinking of something like, oh, I have to go make his dinner, and he'll just come at my door like, yeah, I'm ready, or just things like that. So I do believe he has that ability. And another thing through the telepathy tapes that I had heard of was when one of the children who was assigned to a speech pathologist, I believe, and she was helping him to learn to communicate by using, I believe, a spelling board or a device, because that's what my son has. He has a device that everything's on it that he could touch and point to, and it can speak for him because he's nonverbal. But she said the kid asked her through this device or somehow, I can't remember clearly, but to help him bring his light body into the body that he's in right now. And she said she worked with him for the next year or so, helping him to anchor himself. And I believe my son has trouble being anchored here. And, he has, besides having severe level 3 autism, he also has pandas, which some parents watching this might know as well, which is also where he gets sick and it just exasperates all his symptoms. And he goes into like these cycles of being sicker at different times of the seasons and months. And it was a huge thing for us for about 10 years of our lives. Like we finally have it stable right now, but it's a huge thing. And so um being able to help him was always my thing. Like, how do I help you? And I would ask him that, how do I help you? How does mommy help you? Because I used to like watch him suffer. And so I know it's hard. What I started to do was just realize that I'm not here to live his journey, but here to help him. And I just do that. I just help him. Just like Ross said, if somebody's hungry, you offer them food. I help him any way I can. And I still be there as a loving presence and guide for him. And that's where I come to understand now. It's not about like trying to control what's happening or control the situation or get him better. It's just about living and enjoying him as the being that he is and allowing other people to experience it. I will say I laugh now when the personal care worker is working with him and she's like, Dylan, he won't do this or he's doing that and I just laugh because I'm like, don't worry, he's just teaching you. He's teaching you patience. You'll just have to learn, like you're just going through the process how he teaches, and how he teaches is through patience. You have to understand, you have to accept him, and you just have to love him the way he is. So
Indeed. Yeah, good lessons for all of us going forward, for sure. If it's okay with you folks, I would like to take a look at what Quo has said about children with ADHD. This also is a long passage. This is going to take 3 slides to read through, but again, I figured if anyone here has a child with ADHD or knows one, and boy, I definitely saw more of those in my last few years of teaching, I would imagine you would find the information here helpful. This is from September 22nd, 2021. Quo said, the condition observed or perceived in some entities upon your planet at this time that has been labeled or described as ADHD or some similar condition or in some similar form may have indeed been chosen, pre-selected, if you will, by an entity before coming into lifetime. And in that way, it can be seen to be serving a purpose not only for the entity who chooses such a vibration in its mind, body, spirit complex, but also for those around that entity as it is born and grows up and adopts a profession, a career, a lifetime of experiences and work and family and in friendships. I neglected to mention in the beginning, sorry, I'm going to cut in here for a minute. For viewers who didn't know this, ADHD stands for
Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Thank you. Or ADD, attention deficit disorder. Thank you for saving me. I was blanking on it for a minute. Moving right along. Hyperactive is the word we used to call these kids back when I was growing up in school. Continuing on, Quo says, the entities being mirrors to another, mirrors of self and other self, do provide the purpose of increasing each entity's adaptability to each other, each entity's ability to adjust preconceived notions or tolerances that each may have, adjusting such that to allow for a different vibration to exist in an other self or in their own self. For it can be understood that those with so-called ADHD have a certain vibration or frequency or a pattern of biological, neurological behavior and thinking that is occurring at a frequency that is perhaps faster than the vibrations of entities around it. However, there are 2 situations we will mention regarding this. One is that the vibration or the frequency upon your planet has been increasing and becoming faster in general. Those who seem to vibrate or operate at a frequency to themselves which is faster, more speeded up, you could say, are in some way reflecting the faster vibration of your environment generally. They are attuned to that faster vibration, the faster pace of life, the faster frequency, the higher frequency that your planet is gradually becoming. Another idea we may speak of here is that in some cases, those who have or are seen to be having ADHD are in fact vibrating at this faster rate because they will provide a greater match to a particular profession or activity that the entity is planning to do in its lifetime. And in such cases, that faster frequency is serving that entity quite well. It will be the match it needs to be to that activity. An example of this can be seen in the person who, operating at a faster pace, seems to be out of step with those seemingly more normal around them as they grow up. But yet, if that young person, so quick at everything, so fast in its thinking and actions, may then be quite suited to becoming an emergency medical technician, for example, someone who has to work within seconds of time, very quickly, doing several things at once and doing them well, and is operating at that faster frequency, able to do that profession and be a perfect match to it and save lives because of it. So we would say that if we could look at this condition that those on your planet call ADHD, look at it in a new way across the lifetime of a person and see or perceive perhaps that it has a purpose. It has a use to attune that person to the thing that it will do in life in a most productive way. In fact, in a most excellent way. A final comment we would make upon this subject is that the consciousness collectively upon your planet is becoming aware of all the different types and speeds of mental and neurological abilities, all the different speeds that exist, and are becoming more able to allow for, to be tolerant of, those that may operate at a different frequency, whether it be slower or faster, more in depth or more upon the surface of subjects. All entities have their own unique way, their own unique frequency, and consciousness is growing to accept this, each accepting one's own portrait in frequency and accepting those of other selves, so that each can see the beauty of the whole, the beauty of the entire collection of entities and all their uniqueness, each one thus enabling more love and compassion to exist between and among entities, so that there are really no labels, no conditions that exist outside of norm, but rather each one coming forth in this lifetime, perfect as they are, and operating at that perfect frequency for their intentions in this lifetime, for the role that they will play, the purpose they will fulfill, the love and the beauty they will bring to the world and to themselves and to others. So much to unpack from this. I really love the idea that people who seem to be hyperactive are really just vibrating at a faster frequency. And that's super helpful because the planet as a whole is vibrating at a faster frequency, higher density. I think that's a great thing, at least to start with. Raquel, did you have any thoughts, reflections on anything from these 3 slides?
Yeah, that's a lot of slides, but good information. I would relate this to my daughter. She is not officially diagnosed with ADHD. Um, but I feel her dad had it as well. And since she was a baby, she doesn't sleep. She's like this, like she requires very little sleep, and she's always going. She always has this energy to do stuff, and I'm like, go to bed. Go to your bed. And she's like, no. I'm like, so besides being like a challenge, she's also doesn't sleep. She's also very busy, but then she can create art and she can paint and she can just freehand just paint. And I'm like, that's like, how do you do this? So what I feel like is that they, like the previous slides mentioned, they just have this connection to the creator that's like, it's just there. They can plug into it at any time they need to. And I feel like that's what she does, because for years when she started painting, I was like, oh, this beautiful art from this little 8-year-old. And then she stopped painting for years. And I was like, why don't you paint anymore? And I was trying to encourage her and I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, that's to the side right now. But then all of a sudden she'll just get in her mood, she'll go and she'll just paint. So she has that ability to connect in and channel that energy. But I do believe technology is playing a part in her connection to the creator. So it's very important that we probably try to help guide them into that quiet time that they need to kind of keep that connection going. And I say that not to be like, miss, like they should do this, but it's important for them to learn that they have that access. And I try to tell her about meditation, of course, and tell her to make sure she have those little silent moments in the morning and in the night before she goes to bed. And she dreams a lot. She lucid dreams. So she's one of those very like she's definitely, I said I
I
wasn't,
believe she's an indigo child would be the word for it. Yeah. If we're
I
going to go with labels here.
yeah. When she was younger, I knew, but as she was getting older, I was like, she's a bit of a problem person to her brother a lot. So I'm like, is she? I don't know. But
Yeah.
everybody's learning their lessons, so I can't judge her on that, and I try not to. I let her be who she is. But yeah, I would say she falls into this category of having the access to the creator when she needs it, and being her authentic self is definitely shines through to the point where it kind of bothers others around her. And so that's how I know she's really being who she is.
It's a beautiful story. Yeah. Appreciate your sharing. Aram, any thoughts, reflections?
Yeah, I have an ADD diagnosis, and my son has both ADD and autism, and it's been really helpful for me to have a kid with ADHD because when I was younger, I realized like, oh, I had all these symptoms, and at the time, you know, teachers, parents, educators, they didn't really understand, and so I felt I was shamed a lot, or I felt a lot of shame for things that I really felt like I couldn't control, or I had no control over. And like for instance, I used to sing all the time, and I think now I realize it was like a form of verbal stimming, and but the kids would just make fun of me, and it got shamed out of me. And my son, same way, he's always dancing, always verbalizing, like just overflowing with energy. And in school they would suppress that. And so one of the reasons why I don't have him in school is like I allow those things to just flow through him naturally. I don't encourage him to suppress it. He's always dancing, like just waiting in line for something. He's just like moving his body, and I don't know, it's really beautiful. And I want to relate it to the the process of becoming a positive social memory complex. And I really see this passage as, we talk a lot about diversity, and it's not just like, racial diversity, like we're moving into an area where we're accepting all levels of diversity, including neurodiversity. And, when I first came across the Law of One and was thinking about like this process of becoming a social memory complex, I remember thinking, oh, like I didn't want to merge into like a a collective, and because there was this fear that like, oh, does this mean that we just have to like, conform and become like each other? And I think on the negative path, maybe that's true. Like there is a level of like conformity, but the way I see a positive social memory complex, the way it can exist is because there's there's complete acceptance for how each individual is in their own uniqueness, and there's
Right.
love for all different forms of the creator. And you can love someone who's like completely different from you, and that gives you permission to be absolutely yourself, because you can be who you are, and you can accept the other person for who they are. And there's no conflict there. There's just love and appreciation.
Mm.
Yeah, I appreciate your sharing that. I definitely was picking up on that part in the middle of the second paragraph on the screen, that all entities have their own unique way, their own unique frequency, and consciousness is growing to accept this. And I think that's a great example of what you're talking about. Do you have any thoughts, reflections, Ragnar?
Oh yeah. If you're a parent of an indigo child, these things are the most patently obvious right off the bat. They can read your emotions, and they've got the telepathy a little more turned on, and those you can start to see those incidences crop up a little later. But first thing you notice is that they are like little energizer bunnies. My eldest did not sleep. Um, just, all throughout the night, she'd just be parading around her room, yelling and screaming. I have no idea how a tiny growing body could function and operate on the levels of sleep that she got. As her parent, I felt like an unwitting participant in some kind of CIA sleep deprivation torture experiment. The first, the
Yeah,
first 3 years of her life took off the last 15 of mine.
thank you.
But yeah, my youngest leans a little more ADHD, and you can see it. It can be frustrating for the parents because they really can't sit still. They really cannot. It's like their skeleton is trying to jump out of their skin. You want them to sit down and eat, and they will take one bite of the sandwich, and they got to run some laps. And to us, it's so easy to just sit down and just relax and hold still. And it's to them, they just can't. It's like take 2 Adderall and then sit still. Don't bounce your heel off the floor and don't shift around. You just can't do it. But they are operating at that higher frequency. It's abundantly clear, and the Earth is going there, and that's why they're here at that level. And I don't know about you guys, but I really do feel like everything is speeding up and accelerating. I know that it's typical that as you age, your perception of time is supposed to speed up, but I don't feel old enough to have seen the change in rapidity that time itself feels to be flowing at now. I remember maybe 10 years ago, let's see, in a day, you have about 16 hours of useful consciousness. And I remember feeling like you were able to do a lot of things in that 16 hours and even still have time to be bored.
Mm.
And that 16 hours now feels more like six. Feels like you have about 6 hours in a day compared to how things used to be. And for me, it's like I just feel like I'm running a marathon every day. But the kids are I mean, they can totally roll with it. And that energy, it's chaotic and difficult to contend with in its raw form, but it's very apparent that when channeled properly, if it can be guided, that it is extremely powerful, and it does open them up to the ability to pick things up quicker, and abilities like with music. My eldest it just has a knack for anything musical. She's always been fascinated. The only thing that would get her to stop running around was putting on some kind of live musical performance type of thing. That was the one thing that she would become captivated enough to sit still for a little while. And we got her a little keyboard just the other day. So she hasn't had any formal lessons yet, but I was able to teach her the hook, the first like 30 seconds of I think it's called Axel F. It's the theme song for Beverly Hills Cop, but it's reasonably complicated, and she was able to pick it up within 10 minutes to where she could just duplicate it, and her mom was just sitting back there like, marveling at that. So, yeah,
It's a catchy hook for sure. I think I know what
yeah,
you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, they are little Energizer bunnies, and they are a little bit difficult to manage for that reason, but that's the way that this planet is headed. So they're compatible with that.
For sure. Yeah. Which is a great segue, I think, into our final topic. Did anybody else have anything you wanted to share on this passage before we look at our last couple?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, that children, I think it's becoming clear that there are so many different ways to learn. And my son, I'll hear him start running around in the living room, and sometimes I worry that it's be out of distress or something, and I'll be like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm just running. Running helps me think."
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes more sense. Makes sense. Well, I mean, we know that the planet is already fully vibrating in fourth density, and we're all awash in fourth density vibrations, much as third density vibrations are pretty much phasing out. And it would make sense. They have said that fourth density light has more information in it, more truth in it. That's why they call them densities. Each different density apparently has light that is increasingly more dense, has more information in it. So it would make sense that a dual activated child is responding to that increased amount of information at a faster pace. It's amazing. Which I believe brings us to perhaps the most important topic of all, which is parenting tips. This is from July 27th, 1986, and this is from another Confederation entity known as Lilima. Lilima said, "Thus, you have been born at this time many strong and sometimes disruptive entities who are old souls desperately in search of the lifting of the veil, which is felt but not understood. As children, they will sometimes seem older, sometimes incredibly young, but always strong, willful, and very much each his own person. These entities will polarize with the determination of steamrollers, and it should be an interesting generation upon your planet, interesting alike for those who bear them and for them themselves. It is completely unknown, and shall we say even odds, that all of these entities shall or shall not graduate. Therefore, we give no percentage, but only advise each who considers the bearing of children that it is a service to many an old soul, and in addition, a service to those pioneers of fourth density vibration that shall be the nucleus of the beginning of fourth density on this planet, that being a positive fourth density, as already determined by the fact that you are very near critical mass for harvest. Fascinating passage, and this was all the way back in 1986. It's pretty funny to think of how much it still resonates today. But you know, that last part, that last sentence is something I hadn't really picked up on before about you are very near critical mass for harvest. And I think that is a fascinating, encouraging thing to know. And I think for anyone who might be hesitant to have children at this time, because it looks like a really crazy, fucked up world being a child into at this time, I think this idea that, yeah, if you choose to bring a soul into this world, you are doing a great service to that soul who wanted to come here specifically to help with this transition, as well as to the planet as a whole, planting those seeds for fourth density. It's really a beautiful thing. Aram, any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
Yeah, I think becoming a parent at this time is probably the most beautiful sacrifice at times, but also beautiful lesson that one can learn because yeah, the kids are teaching us. We think that we're teaching them, but really it's the other way around. And yeah, I think about the seniority of vibration, and the souls that are coming onto the planet right now are probably all very advanced souls. And so if you have the hope and the faith, I think it takes extreme optimism to bring a child into the world. And so that's an act of where we're potentially going. So yeah.
It's a great act of service and an act of great sacrifice, have you said, for sure. Because you know it's going to be challenging, no doubt about it. Ragnar, anything to add?
Couldn't agree with that more. They are teaching us. I constantly get that impression, and I have been getting that throughout my eldest upbringing. It reminds me of when Luke Skywalker first meets Yoda, and he thinks he's just an annoying little troll, and Yoda is playing dumb, and he's trying to steal his dinner, and he's smacking R2-D2 with a stick, and just getting up in his business and being annoying, and Luke just thinks he's just this little annoying dude, and then he hears Obi-Wan's voice call him Master Yoda, and suddenly he realizes that, oh, nope, this guy was just testing my patience and maturity. That's which is exactly how I feel at times.
Reminds me of the entity known as Yada, who obviously comes across in channeling sessions as kind of annoying and weird too. No coincidence, I'm sure. Look it up, viewers, if you haven't seen Yada, Yadda. Raquel, any thoughts, reflections, anything?
Yeah, I didn't know at first, but as I got further into the law of one and understanding more things, I recognized that my kids and I have this pre-incarnative contract or plan, whichever way you want to look at it. And I know that because before I had kids, I used to have this burning desire to have kids. Like I was obsessed with kids. I still love kids. I go up and talk to babies, you see little toddlers. I just love watching kids do their kid stuff. So I hope it doesn't come off weird, but yeah, I just love seeing kids be kids, them doing silly things, running around, walking, almost falling. I love kids. And so I had this desire in me to have kids. And I guess that's one of the ways you might know if you're thinking about, can I even bring a child into this world? But yeah, if you have this desire and you're wondering, why do I have this desire to have kids? And that was me. I had a desire to have kids, and I guess it was part of my plan. And these two came through, and I'm gonna tell you, they're extremely challenging, but I feel like I had the best, we had made this plan and they chose me because I had things that I was going to offer both of them, because my kids are in two different directions. You know what I mean? One would be considered neurotypical and is creative and artistic, but is still like this classic, human being, 3D human being, but has this soul that wants to evolve and desires to be more. And then I have this severely autistic child that's, can't speak and requires so much care and so much love and empathy and compassion. And I have to be everything to both of them at different times. And I learned that, with my daughter, I would treat her, I wanted her to be stronger. So I would give her more responsibility and offer her more opportunity to be independent. And with my son, I was taking care of him more and nurturing and, and I realized that I had to like, they require different things, but I also had to look at my daughter and say, you know what? She still needs the love and nurturing that I give my son, not because she can handle herself a little bit better. So they've taught me lessons that I had to learn, that, okay, just because one is stronger and can do more things doesn't mean that they don't still need that cuddle time and that love time. And so, and my daughter come to me and tell me, I need that. I need cuddle and love time. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm taking care of your brother and, and he requires more and I have nothing left. And she's like, but I still need my love. And so kids teach you things, like they let you know, and they have no problem letting me know what they need. I tell you that. And so I've learned so much from both of them in different ways. And I'm still learning because they're still here. Apparently they didn't get the memo to leave. And so, they're still here. So I still have to take care of them. But I keep telling my daughter, she goes, I'm leaving. I'm like, don't forget to take your brother. It's like, you're leaving, take him with you. So I enjoy them. We're having fun at this point, but I would say it requires a lot of love and patience to be a parent to a children, period, but to be parent to children that have these type of
For sure.
consciousness, it requires a lot.
For sure. Which I think would be a great segue into our last passage. Let's take a look at this one. This was from August 18th, 2004, and it has been edited for brevity to fit it all on a slide. Quo said, again, it is nothing that you say that will mean as much in teaching children as how you are. How do you treat everything and everyone around you? How do you think of that world about you? In what way do you discuss the issues to which entities with double activated bodies would be so sensitive? Damage to the environment, damage to other selves, lack of human rights, injustice, and unfairness. These things will nag like thorns at a double activated child. For these children, things happen quickly. Ideas develop quickly. Questions come up quickly. Expect this process to occur when it does, with some speed, and just see what you can do to maintain your own humor, patience, and humility. You are not an authority figure to a double activated entity. You are an advisor. You are, if you have been careful, considered to be a good one, and you will be listened to, for there are deep threads of honor and respect that run through a double activated child. They can be easily distorted by disappointment, and the typical disappointed double activated indigo child can be a tough cookie. So we would just offer you the encouragement to stay within your own integrity, offer what encouragement you can, and by all means, do not assume that your child, being double activated, has no need of guidance. Such children, like any children, do need persistent and firm limits. We would simply say, make those limits loving, understandable, simple, and then be willing to explain them, to stand by them, and to take insults and disagreement when it is inconvenient for other selves to observe these boundaries. Do not let that phase you, but keep the boundaries that you feel are important, not combatively, but persistently, quietly, and firmly. Beautiful passage there. Really love everything that they're saying. And I guess it reminds me of what's been said a number of times, that all is one and that one thing is love. Everything is about love. And if you can't find the love in the moment, then you have faulty perception. And that love is, in fact, the answer to every question and the solution to every problem. So I guess that applies to parenting as well. That includes setting boundaries when needed. with love. Aram, any thoughts, reflections on anything here?
Yeah, um, it's making me emotional because I realize like, yeah, it's not what you say to them. It's like your kids are always watching you. They're always observing you. So it's like you really have to walk the walk. And you have to be loving and forgiving, if you want them to learn those things. And so yeah, it's like yeah, it makes you level up because you want to be a good example for your child. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I remember my own kids apparently understood the meaning of the word hypocrite from a very early age, because I remember being called a hypocrite a couple times by a kid who was not even double digits old yet. And that really hurt, I'm telling you, especially when it was true. So, yeah, anytime you're saying one thing and doing something different, yeah, I know that kids pick up on that for sure. Ragnar, any thoughts, reflections?
Yeah, um, yeah, it can be tough. You do have to be just real open and honest with them. You got to really keep it on the real with them. They can read you. They can tell what you're feeling. Um, I I mean, I've gotten to the point where I feel like I'm compelled to not only govern my outward expression, but to really get a hold on what I allow myself to feel internally. And when a strong emotion rises up inside, even though I've got a total poker face, that doesn't fool them at all. And it doesn't even have to be micro expression. They can be in the back seat of the car looking down at a drawing, and I'll get cut off by a dude on a bicycle riding with all the cars, and then suddenly my daughter's like, "Are you mad?" Just out of the blue, And yeah, they know. They can tell. Um and yeah, I've just kind of had to approach it like, if they're old enough to ask, then we're old enough, then we can now open the discussion on this topic, no matter how difficult that is. Sometimes you got to give them sort of a simplified version of it, but try to avoid sugarcoating. And the do as I say, not as I do does not fly whatsoever. Like yeah, they will recognize that hypocrisy right off the bat. The subject of cursing, because I do it a little bit there. They hear it, and there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And back in my day, parents would curse. You're not allowed. You just don't say it just because it's disrespectful. There's a blanket statement on it, and that's just the way it is. But with mine, I've had to kind of explain to them, like, okay, there are these particular words that we've chosen, and there's these game rules, and kids are not allowed to say them around adults. You kind of describe the whole social dynamic around the concept of curse words. And when you just describe them like that, at least my kids, they've accepted it, and they have willingly bought into the game, and they will, not curse at school or out in public, but they do a little bit at home, and so do I. So, I'm not going to shut that down.
Yeah.
Um, and that's just
Well,
kind
that's
of how
part
it
of
is.
being your authentic self that they're talking
Yeah.
about, I think. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, much appreciate that. Yeah, for sure. Raquel, anything to add?
Yeah, a little bit. So I agree with a lot of what both Ragnar and Ram said. We have such similar situations going on. Um, but I would say, you know what, I question myself sometimes because the way I parent the kids is trying to be, like you said, the advisor and the guide really, with loving discipline. And it's been a challenge for my daughter, especially because, um, she's just such a free spirit. She just wants to do whatever she wants to do. And she doesn't really care for authority. Even me, like I would tell her, you're not allowed on your device. And like 5 minutes later, she's on her device and she's like, well, I have nothing else to do. And I'm like, this has been since she was like 7. Okay, so it's like, how do you parent somebody who's already made up their mind that they govern themselves? And so that has been quite a challenge with me, and I've had to take the L and the insults and just be like, okay, I can do this, you know? And but what I realized is that I've also nurtured a relationship between me and her that ever since she was younger, I'd ask her, "How was your day at school?" Every day since she's started school. And now we have this relationship. When she's going through stuff, she comes and talks to me about it. And I love that. And I'm talking every and anything, everything that's happening. She just got into, um, a situation with her two best friends at school, and they weren't talking for a while. And, I had to guide her through it. And it's just, it's a wonderful avenue between me and her where she feels so comfortable to tell me anything that's going on in her life. And I'm talking anything. And I feel so blessed that I have that relationship with her. And yes, I'm still the one that has to tell her she can't go here, or she's not allowed this, or she's off her device for a month because her grades are slipping. And yet, you know, I feel like there's still this level of respect there. Like she could
Nice.
come to me. So I feel good that I've put myself in that position. And with my son, it's funny, I can't, his discipline is way different. I have to look at him like, you're not being a good guy right now. And he's like, he looks at me like, I'm sensing that you're unhappy with me. I'm still gonna be this way though. It's like I'm not gonna change what I'm doing. I'm still gonna. So it's funny how you have to like I
Every soul is unique. They
have to
all
out of
communicate in their own
back
unique way.
my out of nowhere. But yeah, we've developed a good relationship. I feel like I have them understanding me, and I understand them at this point a lot. And yeah, so it takes time and
Good.
it takes practice and patience. So don't rush yourself, and there's no plan and there's no script to whoever you're parenting. It's just you having to learn as you go along, you
For
know.
sure. Yeah, and one of the most valuable lessons I learned as a teacher working with seventh graders was that kids aren't really that different from adults, and adults aren't really that different from kids. So I learned fairly early on just to treat everybody the same way and treat everybody with the same respect that I would want to be treated with. And I think you can even go one step further, which is recognize from a law of one perspective that everyone is the one infinite creator in another body. Everyone is you in another body. So talking to them that way and treating them
Yeah,
that way,
I
good
personally
thing.
treat kids like people and not like little kids from like young. So maybe that's why I was like, is it because because I just talk to her like not like she's just a child, but like she's a person. And I don't know, I guess, yeah. So it's okay to do that as well because they are just another person,
Yeah,
just with us.
indeed. Anybody have any last thoughts on this passage before we wrap things up here? Sounds good. So where do we go from here? What are some good takeaway lessons that we might pick up from our 2 hours plus discussion? And those of you watching this on YouTube, there's a great meme on the stream, on the screen. For those of you listening, you should be watching this on YouTube. So a couple takeaway lessons I might suggest. One, yeah, just remember that indigo children are wired more for fourth density than third, and everything that goes with that. And that, yes, care for the planet is a really big part of the indigo agenda, as it were. They came here to help the planet. And that autism, ADHD, may well be part of their wiring for fourth density. And lastly, to set boundaries with love and do everything that you do as a parent with love. Ragnar, any takeaway lessons of your own you'd like to add, or any final thoughts, reflections on the subject?
Um, First, I just want to say great film, by the way, that this meme is from. If you haven't seen it,
I haven't. What film is it from?
it's called The Babadook, and it's this movie, and this lady has this neurodivergent kid, and all the struggles, and she kind of stuffs things down too much, and all her struggles and stuff with that sort of manifest as this sinister creature that is trying to worm its way into her and corrupt her and get her to kill the kid and herself.
Oh, Lordy.
And yeah, a little bit gnarly there, but she
A little
conquers
on the
it.
dark side. Yeah.
She does. I mean, it's not inaccurate though. I mean, you got the kid drowning in the bathtub and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it happens, but she ends up conquering the whole thing, and then they kind of live happily ever after. So it's nice and happy, and it's a good
You heard
thing.
it here, folks. The story behind the meme.
Yeah,
Anything else? Any other final thoughts on Indigo Children?
yeah. Just I mean, just remember that they are you're meeting Yoda. It's the first scene, and it's testing your patience, but they are actually masters in disguise. And
Nice.
yeah, you're just not going to be able to force your hand. The because I said so is not going to fly. And I remember in I think I like the last sentence of the last passage you had where it talks about do keep the boundaries that you feel are important, not competitively, but persistently, quietly, and firmly. And to me, that just reminds me of the power of the nag, just subtly nagging over a long term. It's very, very effective. More, the my parents would yell and hit, and that didn't work. So it's all about the long con, the nag.
Well said. Yeah. Raquel?
Well, first of all, just insert me and my children in this meme, and that is exactly us for like, that's us. So that's our lives. But I love that. I say to my daughter, because my son, he would be the one screaming, and she'd be like, he's so annoying. And I'd say, he is a fourth density being who came back here to help us raise our consciousness. He's a light being. And my daughter said, no, he's just an idiot. And I'm like, yeah, that too.
And you're both correct. Yeah.
That's both right. So that's just, you have to find the humor in it. And if you have small children, I would say start developing that communication between where they can just talk to you about anything. As they get older, they'll continue that process. And I know it's cliche, but like you just love that channel that you have with them to be able to talk to them. And suddenly they'll come to you and ask you spiritual questions. And you're like, sure, I got, I'll help you. I'll help guide you with that. So, and then you living the way you are authentically. I live where my daughter sees me having to go meditate. She sees me having to speak on podcasts. She sees me talking to my group. She sees me leaving, whatever we're doing for a few minutes to go have quiet time. So I'm living my authentic way of living right now. And she's witnessing that. And so eventually, like they said, your kids watch what their parents do. So
For sure. Absolutely. Aram?
Yeah, one last piece of advice, I guess, would be if you are a parent with, kids on the spectrum or ADHD, um, surround yourself with other parents that are also parenting these kids, because I think sometimes the hardest part is like and it's well meaning, but sometimes you'll get advice from parents who are parenting neurotypical kids and that advice just doesn't work. And just know that you are supported. And yeah, sometimes it can be hard because yeah, you'll get all sorts of like advice and recommendations, but you should really kind of be around people who know what you're going through and have gone through it themselves. Yeah.
As they say, those of like mind who seek together shall far more surely find. Well, panelists, I want to thank you for a great discussion. As always, you are the best panel we've ever had on this podcast. And I know I say that to every panel, but this time I really mean it. You guys are the tops. But let's see how you do on our pop quiz. Pop quiz, of course, is something we like to do in our podcast just to kind of end on a fun note and maybe look for law of one connections in pop culture. So since today's episode was on Indigo Children, today's pop quiz is going to be on a very well-known movie made about 25 years ago and often appears on lists of best movies of all time. It is what you would call a psychological thriller starring Bruce Willis as a child psychologist whose patient claims that he can see and talk to dead people. I am referring, of course, to what movie, panelists?
The Sixth Sense.
yeah.
Sixth Sense, indeed. Yes. Great movie. Panelists, raise your hand if you have seen The Sixth Sense. Let the Akashic records show that all three panelists are raising their hands. Sounds good. Well, today I'm going to ask you three questions about the sixth sense. See how many you can answer correctly. Viewers who are watching, go ahead, say your answers out loud. We can hear you through time space. As always, points don't matter. If you had fun, you won. And if you learned something interesting about this classic piece of pop culture, you won as well. Panelists, are you ready for your first question?
Bring it on.
First question. Director M. Night Shyamalan used what to indicate scenes where the physical and spiritual worlds overlapped? Was it A, red objects, B, a single musical note, or C, subliminal sounds? What do you think? Panelists, just say your answers out loud.
B.
B sounds good. Different
A.
answer? A sounds good. Ragnar?
Oh, I haven't seen this in so long. A.
Nice. Indeed, the correct answer is red objects. Yeah, used in many scenes. The door opening to the church, or the red tent where he saw the girl who was murdered by her mother, the red doorknob that goes to Bruce Willis's downstairs office, and the red balloon that goes up the stairwell, foreshadowing the encounter after that. And there's many more as well. Super cool technique, though, and this movie certainly solidified Shyamalan's reputation as a great filmmaker of thrillers, especially with the little twists at the end. Are you ready for your second question? How about this one? Which child actor did Shyamalan originally want to play the role of Cole Sear? Was it A, Michael Cera, B, Elliot Page, C, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, or D, Haley Joel Osment?
D. Wait, yeah, D. I was like, that is who played William.
What'd you say,
The
Raquel?
D. D for me.
B. Sounds
No,
good.
D. D as in Haley.
D as in Haley. Sounds good. Ragnar? Aram?
Originally wanted, so the implication would be that it was not. Well, all right, I'm gonna say
Well, this
C.
is a typical pop quiz
Yeah,
question.
you're gonna trick
Don't
question
fall
us.
for Jonathan's trick.
Sometimes it is the actor who got the part, and oftentimes they were not the first choice. So
All right,
which is the case here?
I'm gonna gamble and go on C. Because
Yeah,
I
I'm
know
gonna
that I've
say
heard that name before, so
Oh, nice.
yeah.
Aram?
I'll go with C as well.
Nice. Yeah, Joseph Gordon-Levitt was truly a gifted child actor. He was in Third Rock from the Sun sitcom for a long time and did great roles as an adult, most notably in Inception, I think, as well. That is not the correct answer, though. The correct answer is indeed D, Haley Joel Osment. Shyamalan was quoted as saying, after Haley Joel Osment auditioned for the part and read for the part, Shyamalan said, "When I left the room, I told the casting director, I don't know if I want to make the movie if it's not with that kid." He really played that part so beautifully. And I went back and watched some YouTube clips, and it's like, yeah, it is amazing the emotional depth of this kid actor. And unlike so many other movies where there's some 25-year-old playing a 18-year-old high school student, it's like, no, this kid was a young kid playing a young kid. And yeah, just really beautiful, amazing. Michael Cera, interestingly enough, did actually audition for the part. But he said that I auditioned for The Sixth Sense, which I didn't know was about seeing dead people. They didn't mention that in the breakdown. After seeing the movie and remembering the scene they had me read, it was the scene with the penny. Bruce Willis is saying, "I can't be your doctor anymore," and Haley Joel Osment starts crying and slides the penny over to him. It's a very emotional scene, and I did not do it that way. I did it upbeat. I said, "Some magic's real," very optimistically. I could totally picture him saying that in that Michael Cera way. He is in Juno or Superbad or something. Yeah, it's hilarious. It's funny they didn't tell them that the movie is about a kid who sees dead people. That seems like a fairly important piece of information to tell an actor before they read for the part. Who knows? Are you ready for your last question?
Yep.
Your last question. While filming The Sixth Sense, Tony Collette, who played his mother, did what? Was it A, felt the presence of her deceased grandmother, B, saw repeating numbers, or C, shaved her head?
Oh boy.
That's a big fat A.
Me too. A.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll go with A.
Nice. Unfortunately, that is not the correct answer. The correct answer is B. She's quoted as saying, "In the hotel room I was staying at in Philadelphia, I started meditating a lot. And then I would wake up at night, roll over, and look at the clock. And it was always a repeated number, 111, 333, 444. That started to really spook me."
Okay,
Panelists, is that something you can relate to?
you socially engineered us because I think in that scene she feels it's the grandma, and that just kind of snuck its way in there. In that scene that you have pictured there, they're
Oh,
talking
that's
about the
right.
grandma, and that's so I made that. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
You know what? I wasn't even thinking of that, but you're right. Yeah, that was the last scene, which is a beautiful scene where he finally tells her his secret, and it becomes a blessing instead of a curse. And he learns to actually work with the spirits in a positive way to help them. Beautiful thing.
She played that scene so well. It was so moving watching that scene. Yeah.
she's a
It
phenomenal,
was. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
phenomenal actress. She's
Yes.
in another horror film called Hereditary that she knocks out of the park so hard. It traumatized my wife for about a year. She had nightmares for like a year after seeing
Is
it.
that the one you told me about? You've told me about that one
Yeah,
a couple times.
she's the
Oh,
main
yeah.
character in that movie. Like, I've showed it to friends and stuff, but since she'll like sage the house after that movie has been screened in the house. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's trippy. Well, fun fact, she did not shave her head during the movie, but she actually had a shaved head when she read for the part. And apparently, don't know, the director said, I had seen Muriel's wedding and Tony came in and her head was shaved. I forget if it was fun or if it was for a movie, but she did such a beautiful job. I didn't want to show the video to the studio for fear that they would be concerned with her appearance. And I said, I want to cast the woman from Muriel's wedding. And then Bruce Willis backed me up and said, oh, I love Muriel's wedding. So we got to do it without the studio seeing the audition. And he was lucky. Yeah. Apparently, the wig that she's wearing there in the picture is a wig that she wore in a previous movie. So she just grabbed the wig from that and wore it for this one. But wouldn't have guessed without being told. Well, there you have it, panelists. Super fun. Can you think of any other movies that had children playing like Indigo Children, children with some sort of spiritual gifts or otherworldly gifts? I racked my brains out trying to think of a good movie for this pop quiz, and Sixth Sense was the one that I finally landed on. But I'm sure there's other ones. Escape to Witch Mountain, I think, comes to mind. Another great movie. Other great memes.
Well, it might be a little indirectly, but Elliot in E.T. gets very 4D, at least while he's feeling all the empathy from E.T., where he lets all the frogs out when they're trying to dissect him and stuff. And
All right. That's a good one. Yeah, for sure. Well, maybe we'll do a pop quiz on ET one of these days. Until then, panelists, again, thank you for being here and sharing your love and your wisdom. It's been wonderful. Thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. To all our friends at L&L Research, thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. To you who are watching us on video in the near or distant future, thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. We are sending you our love light, and we are receiving yours. Until next time, Adonai, namaste. Say goodbye, panelists.
Hi, everyone. Bye.